All right, we are here today, and this is our ArcGIS Parcel Fabric Workshop, and this is October 15th, and it's just after 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go and look at rebuilding a subdivision lots. In this case, it's going to be subdivision lots, tax parcels, and an easement or a road through the middle of it. We did this a couple months ago, and I want to sort of include in here now some of the new things that we've learned, some of the things that can help us as we go along. All right. So to start, I kind of cheated a little bit, and I've actually georeferenced the plat for me. All right, and this is the plat. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots. It's got a little cutout up here. It's in there for track number A. It's got the center line of a road running through here, which happens to be the lot lines also. And that road basically is an easement on here. We don't have easements in our individual parcel types, but we'll go and we'll build that as if it's a lot on top of there. So it's a public road on our conveyance divisions components on here. And we'll build that on top of the lots. So, but we will go ahead and build it. So let us start with this. And by the way, I have found that this is almost always advantageous to go and georeference the plat. Take the scan of your plat, georeference it, so you can check and validate and see whether or not it looks like you're you're doing this thing correctly or not. So we haven't covered it before, but and we don't. I don't think we're not going to cover it this time. But let's go ahead and start by saying the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually go and build a record, and this is called the subdivision is called Heathrow. I'm going to create a record, and I'm going to call it Heathrow. And I'm going to spell Heathrow correctly on here. So one thing I'm going to say is that one of the things I've been thinking about, and I get a question often, is when you build a record, especially as it relates to a subdivision record, should you make everything as part of that record? Should you make the subdivision that record? Should you make the lots inside of there? What about the roads? What about tracks? Should you do it all? And I've been going back and forth on it. My thought at the moment is maybe we need to differentiate between what we're building on each of those layers for those. So in that case, I'm going to build a subdivision. I'm going to build a record that has Heathrow, and then I'll put a dash and the subdivision in here, just to note that what I'm actually doing is this is the subdivision component of this, the actual overall polygon of this. Let's go and put that for today and create it. And the reason why I'm suggesting that this might be a good way to do this is because one of the really nice tools associated with records is that you can go in here and you can pull this down and say, show me everything that's associated with this selected record. And if you commingle subdivision polygons and lines, and you commingle lot polygons and lines, and easement polygons and lines, and tax parcel polygons and lines, you then wind up with multiple lines that you've got to go, if you're going to go and do editing on lines, you've got copies and copies and copies. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. So I'm suggesting, at least right now, and I'm willing to go and hear contrarian views, but I'm suggesting that it might be best to sort of have a record that just deals with that one component on that one parcel type for this subdivision. All right. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to turn off my conveyance division right now. I'm going to leave my records on, or my tax records on, because that's actually what defines this here. And I'm going to go to the traverse, and I'm going to start with subdivision lines. But before I start this, one of the things I'm finding is that more and more, as we're going and building things, we have slight bearing rotations between the bearings that are shown on the plats themselves and what we have stored in our individual parcel data. So what I'm going to suggest is that what we really should do is we should go in there and put over here a ground to grid element on here so we calculate this. So let me go in here and type in that what I've got here is 88.0245, and this is northeast on here. And I'm going to put a distance of 0 in here. I don't want it to scale these up. I just want to go and do a bearing rotation on here. All right, and then from that, what I'm going to do is show what this north line is here and let it go and calculate what that is. All right, now when I go in here to go and build this, I'm going to put my starting point here, and note it's going to tell me that it's putting a slight rotation on there of 13 seconds. So it's automatically going to rotate. It's automatically going to be rotated in there correctly. So I'm going to put my 88.0245 northeast, and it is 1309.57 feet. Here is this. This gets me to here. Now actually I did this on purpose. This data that we're fitting it in, it's about 30 feet off where it should be. This north-south line here is not where it's supposed to be. But that's all right. I'm going to build this. I could have accommodated that by, in my corrections for ground to grid, I could have calculated what that scale factor is and included that to make it automatically fit. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to build it because this subdivision is going to be more accurate than the existing data. So I'm going to do adjustments that way. All right, 1.0045 southeast, and this is 657.89 feet on here.
Victoria has a thought in the chat.
Yes,
says,
Victoria.
Thoughts about adding a link website to the subdivision plat in the record. That might be a good idea.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea at all. It's actually a very good idea, in which you can go and reference over the scanned document. You could even reference the georeference document if you want, and that way you could open it up and automatically have it appear exactly where it is. So if you reference something that's been georeferenced, that's fine. The only issue you want to think about when you do that is make sure that whoever's going to be on ArcGIS Pro and Victoria, I know your situation here, so you don't have to worry about this, but you want to make sure that they also can access the repository for where those referenced maps are. So by the way, notice on here, I also have some coordinate values. I could have started that as my starting point. I decided to do this backwards because this is the way my client originally did this, 4003, and this is northeast for 675.89 feet here. So let it go through here. And now this is 1.0514. This is southeast and 664.49 feet here. And then 87.2244 southwest for 1815.87 feet. And then 0.5019 northwest for 909.38 feet. $87.5938. Oh, southwest 174.83 feet. 0.5035 northwest 419.92 feet. Oh, good. Zero closure. Perfect. So now that I've got the overall boundary in here, I can get out of this. Just to go and look at this a little bit more, let's select all the lines associated with this. It's fine. All right. And so we can go to our records again and create the seed for this. There's our seed. There's our build. For the subdivision polygon itself. And then let's go, and this is Heathrow. And this is a subdivision area in here. Yeah, it's not correct on here. So did we set the units in here? Is set to acreage in here? Our distance is feet, angle is here. So it might actually be calculating DMS. All right. It might be calculating square footage there instead. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's in the initial setup on here. So on here now, our next thing is to go and do an adjust of the parcels. So go to align parcels, our next thing, and figure out how we're going to align this. Right now, I have about a 30-foot alignment in here. I'm going to take that down to about 20. There's some areas over here I don't want to go and move. And look what's going to happen here. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle it to the surrounding parcels in here. So one of the things we've learned, Christopher, can you share with us one of the things you've learned in doing aligned parcels?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I've learned,
Yeah,
is that don't all the links need to be within the tolerance to actually work?
I think they do. So I'm just going to create these by hand just to make sure that I do it. I can automatically generate these if I want, but I'm going to do it by hand. And I'm going to run it with this reduced tolerance first. All right. And by the way, I could do parallel here with that line. So it goes and turns that up parallel there. I could also go perpendicular to that line to tell where that point's supposed to go. So here to there. I can also utilize, on that case, this is the alignment option, where it's actually going to go and align them in. I can tell you, I'm old school. It is belt and suspenders on here for me. I want to make sure every one of these links, and I want to control where they're going to go on here more than anything else. I know sometimes this can be tedious, but so what I'm going to do, this one, I want to move over to here. And the same thing here. So this one, I want to move down to here. This one, I want to move to here. This one, I want to move to here. This one to here. This one to here. Leave those as it is. So now that I've established those links, I want to do this experiment to see, do all of these links need to be inside of that tolerance to go and actually work, or does it just need to be a link? All right. So I can now go and do align, and I want to look at this one here. I want to look at this one here. These that are outside the tolerance to see whether they actually go and align up when I go and do this. And what's happening there? It's not aligning. It's aligned the polygon out there, but it didn't necessarily align the actual line there. It created the polygon in there, but that didn't line up. It didn't have problems with it. So let's go here. Let's go back and let's create this alignment up a little bit more and see if we can capture them that way. That one's in there. That one's not in there yet. Let's do 45 on here. All right. So we know that one's there. So let's see what else, what other problems we can encounter with this. That one should be okay. We're going to have an issue here with this one here. So since that's the anchor, it shouldn't touch this at all. I wonder if we go and put another anchor here. If
I was
that's,
just going to recommend that.
thank you. So that by placing that other anchor there, it should not go and move this at all. That should be fine. That should be fine. This should be fine. And now let's try this and see if this works now. So it realigned this, realigned these here, even though they were outside. It looks like there was a line here that was not, or may have been part of some older build on here that I'll have to clean up. But it did, in fact, realign everything else to where it should be. So the lesson on that has to do with whether or not these linkages extend beyond the tolerance at this release, and this is 2.6.2. It looks like you have to make sure that your linkages are within that tolerance or it disregards them. Okay. Go and take this. Let's take this.
All right. Can I ask a question?
No.
Your little curve. There's a little curve just to the north there. It looks a little funky now. Do you do anything with that, or do you just leave it?
Usually I would just leave it, but again, it depends upon what happened. It may have been that this was moved a little bit. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it, to be honest, just sort of wanting to get through it. I would probably check it to see what happened with it and whether or not it might have been that it was tangent before and it's not tangent now. I might go through there and rebuild it using something like a line feature, something like that.
All right. I was just curious what you guys do.
Great question. Great question. But again, for this demonstration,
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't do anything. So by the way, it looks like there's a little bend here or something. I would normally come in here and just say, let's go ahead and run an align features on here. And maybe we just need 5 feet in here, not 50 feet. And just run this to make sure that those lines are the same. Using this method in tolerance. This is align features. And what was happening, let's go ahead and look at this. So if I go and set no topology on here, let's see if that actually goes and allows us to do that now. Straight line here to here. So the topology was causing an issue, maybe because it might have been deleting something or whatever, but just be aware that with align features, it's dependent upon whether or not you have topology set up or being currently active or not. And so if I tried align features and it gave me an error, when I turned off topology and then reran it, it worked fine. By the way, it also has gone now and re-enabled the topology for this. But just be aware that sometimes you run into situations like that with align features and it may not go and do everything that you want it to do. All right. So I have selected, let's go ahead and cheat a little bit and select everything associated with this record. So I have my points, I have my lines, and I have my polygons on here. The visibility issues on there. Okay. Now that I've got that, I'm going to go and use my concept of, okay, now let's go and create a new record and use this to create lots. All right, and do the same sort of thing. Since I have it selected, I can now go, let's turn on our lots. I can now go and try to do a copy lines 2. And I want to copy them to conveyance division. Let's keep everything else on. And yeah, I don't care about that. So let's go and copy it. Now, sometimes we have found that copy lines 2 doesn't work. It gives you an error message on here. And we're trying to identify exactly what it is that the error message is associated with. It may be that the layer in which you are copying it to may be turned off or may not be editable. Or the error, by the way, the error message that you get is that it can't do 3D. It's like that doesn't make any sense on this, but we'll go ahead and do that. So just be aware, if you get that error, what we'll often do is when we have them selected, we'll just go and copy them and we'll do a paste special into the other layer that we wanted to do a copy lines to. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The only difference is copy lines to actually copies the lines and creates a seed. You don't necessarily need to do that if you wind up getting an error from this. So you can always just have the line selected, say copy and paste them special into that additional layer. All right. I now have conveyance division lines. These are set up. They all have the bearings and distances on here. I still have my ground to grid set on here, so it should be fine. Let me go and turn on this again and say, okay, here is my first cut. This is what I have to go and do. I've got track day, which is defined in this here as being, there's a 40 feet, there's a 10 foot, so it's 50 foot down. And I suspect when I go to my line number, my line table, line number 1 is south along there, 50 feet. Excuse me, that's southwest. So that is southwest along the top line for 50 feet. Then it's south for line number 2 for 50 feet. And then it is back east again for 50 feet. So let's go in here and take these lines. Let's only select that one line, select the one line, and let's do a divide on it. So in this case, I could be smart, and hopefully I am smart. I don't want tax lines. Matter of fact, I want to turn off my tax parcels on here. And I'm only going to have my conveyance division lines in here. I can take this and I can divide it up, but if I'm going to be smart, I'm going to look for any other divisions on here, and there are no other divisions. So I can take this and divide it up and take 50 feet off of this, divide that. All right, there's my first 50-foot division. This next line here, and I could do it from the end on here. This is a 50-foot division here. I could say go ahead and divide that. I'm now dividing the former subdivision line, which is now a conveyance division line, and the former subdivision north line, that's now a conveyance division line on here. Are there other cuts in here? Yeah, there are. Maybe I should do this. Let's take this line, which only goes to there, and let's divide a couple of them. Let's divide it into varying. So it looks like the larger, the 697.36 feet is the division here. That's going to be there. Is there a second one here? Let's go scroll this down a little bit. There's 562.21 remaining. That's fine. That's perfect. Let's go and do the rest of these. This line here gets divided. So from the end, it gets divided 218.65 feet here. And what remains is 690.73. That's good. Let's divide it. This line here, and take that, and we don't want that line. We only want this line here. First division from the end is going to be 525.97 feet. All right. Then $865.18 feet here. That goes to this point here, and it leaves us 424.72 feet. That's good. This one looks good. This one looks good here. So I think we've divided the outside as much as we can. If we wish to, we could go and further refine that georeferencing of the scan to where it really should be. I'm too lazy to do that today. So let's just go in here. Back to this. So now let's go to the traverse. These are conveyance division lines here. And here's the beginning on here. And do I remember what that bearing was? No. So this is 88 0.0245 southwest for 50 feet. All right, and then 1.0045 northwest. So here's an interesting thing that I discovered. Let me get all the way over here. Now I'm assuming that this is going to go and attempt to go to this point. If I wish it to go to that point, let's go and put the 50 feet in here now, by the way. All right. I can make sure that it's a closed, sorry, not a closed polygon, but that I set the closed position to here, so it goes and automatically closes back to that point. All right, it doesn't show up very well on this, but I will show you on the next versions of these that I do, that it actually will work better. By the way, let's go and take these and make these a little bit wider so we can see it a little bit better. All right. Okay, so now let's go and input this center line, which actually is also the lot line in this area. So let's go over to this again. This is 11.02 to the boundary of that easement, 2503. So this combined with this is 3605 over to this point here. So let's divide this line. Off the traverse, go in here and select this line, divide it, and this is a single distance from the start. And I say it was 3603 on here. Divide. All right, now I need to start going and inputting a traverse from this point. Conveyance division lines, input the traverse. Let's go and find out what line number 5 is, and then curve number 1 and line number 6. Line number 5 is 0.4352, and that is southwest for 220.61 feet. Curve number 1 is 11.0608 southwest for the chord bearing, CB, 0 for the distance. It's a positive radius, 500.00, and the arc length. Maybe I want to put the delta angle in here every time. Curve number 1, 20.4432 D on this. All right, and then it goes into curve number, or line number 6, which is 21.28.24 southwest. So that is correct there. Curve number 6, 61.94, enter. We now should be on This is curve number 2. Curve number 2, 48.4754, and this is southwest chord bearing. 0 for the distance. The radius is 500 feet, and the central angle 54.3859 D for delta. All right. Now let's go and input some of these other lines. Let's go to where it intersects here. 79.0718, and this is southeast going in this direction, but in fact we're going to go northwest, so we'll go 4, and 696.55 feet. All right. Now here, just to make sure, if we note, let's go in here, these aren't closed. All right. So I can tell it the closing location here. And note when I did that, it automatically went and adjusted it. So it closed on that closing location after I went and input that in there. All right. So one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody's aware of is that you can't just go and input things on the plat because they have rounding values on them. You want to make sure that it closes to the lines that you've gone and broken up the exterior boundary to, so that you actually can make sure that everything is closed. Don't just do bearing and distance and assume it automatically closes. Zoom in there, make sure it closes. Same way here. I've got an existing boundary here. From here, so I want to do a new line, and I want it to start here at that line. And my plat says 15.3036. It says northeast, but it's actually going the other way, so it's southwest. All right, and the distance is, notice it says two things. This is 555.37, but this says 450. That 450 dimension looks like it's to the easement. So let's go 555.37, enter. Let's go down here. There is the closing on here. So let's set our closing distance to there. Set the closing point to there and make sure that it closes. By the way, I haven't clicked or anything on this.
Did that just close correctly?
Well, that's what I'm looking at here.
Are you sure it's not the vertice to the right of it?
You think that's
the
the
vertex
one?
to the right of
Let's
it?
see.
I didn't see one where you clicked, so.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
There's the old line.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here's the new lines. There's a split line there. There's a split line here on here. And I'm pretty sure I clicked in there. Let's remove that just in case. Let's set it again. There it is there. And this is that same issue we were having before, wasn't it, Christopher?
Yeah. Yep.
So if we hold this down, or if we set our tolerance here, let's see if we can do this again. It seems to be coming off further. Now again, we were in here really tight on this. This is 1 to 0.36 in here. We'll
Right.
see when we go to create seeds whether or not this actually is closed on here. All right, let's clear this out, create a new one. Let's first go and divide this up. This is divided into curve 18 and curve 19. Curve 18 is, let's make sure this is the arc length. Curve 18 is 243.71. Let's divide this up. Let's divide this from the start of the line, 218, to 43.71. All right, so this is from the start of the line. No, this should be from the end of the line. There it is there. From the end of the line, 18 is 243. All right, divide that up. Let's go back to Traverse. Let's input this here, conveyance division line. There it is. This is 39.3314. This is southeast for 788.92 feet. And we've set our closing line up here. That one looks like it moved correctly. Let's do a new traverse. Start here, excuse me. Starting line is here. Make sure I snap to there. My bearing, 16.1442. That is northwest for 512.39 feet. All right. And then 29.1407, and that is northwest for 220.42 feet. And oh no, it's not 220. It is actually 333.57 feet here. There we go. Let's turn this sub off right now. So our closing location should be there. And it did move that. All right. Let's go back here and look at this one just to make sure. Yeah, it looks like it is closed on it. So we have, get off of here, we've got that one built, this one built. This is the remainder here, this here, and this here. So let's go and try to create seeds. And it created one here. It did not create one here, but it did create one here.
The other one is the center of the subdivision, the north, the one just to the
right. This one is the center of the subdivision. So if I go in here, for example, and select that one and delete it, all right, it should go and automatically, if I go to create seeds again, it should go and create a new one for there. So the question is, why is this one not building it? There's one here. And I think that's an old line, is what I'm seeing there. Because I didn't build that line. That might have been in there before. So the question is, why doesn't this close? Why don't we create one for here? Why isn't it done there? Now it did it. So what was the difference?
Was it outside of the extent?
Was it? I don't know. I didn't.
I don't remember seeing the whole thing the first
Yeah.
time you did it. I don't know if that would have caused the issue.
Outside the extent. Now I can go and build these. So if I look here at this is lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's track day. So let's go and use, let's use the sequencing, the sequence numbering, and we're going to do it on conveyance division polygons. Name field, we're going to do it 1, we're going to start at 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, let's make sure that these are labeling on here. One thing we do have to do, we've got these all selected. Let's make them a lot so that they at least make them all lots at the moment. And let's try to figure out our labeling. There we go. We did not have our labeling turned on. So the only other thing we have here is this one record here, this one tracked here, and that's actually, what shall we call that? An outlot. And on the subdivision, it says this is called track day. All right. All right, so with that, we went and built all of our lot polygons on here. The next thing I want to do is, again, because this has a road easement on here, I'm going to go and put on the conveyance division, because we don't have an easement parcel type here, I'm going to go and create a road right of way and cul-de-sac here to represent the road in here. I can also go and build these other easements if we want, and we'll just call them roads on it. So the way this works is this is actually a 25-foot, a 50-foot wide road easement through here. And this looks like this is C10. So this is a 50-foot wide cul-de-sac here. And on here, it has C5 on there. C5 has a 40-foot radius on here. Okay, so it looks logical that this has some sort of return on here. So how am I going to do this? I could, if I wanted to, just have that line, and I could draw a cul-de-sac on the end of that line. I could also select the rest of these lines here and unselect the polygons. So I only have my lines. I don't care about my points. I only have these lines. I could parallel those lines in here to create the road by using a copy parallel. Copy parallel, make sure I put it on my conveyance division lines, copy them 25 feet on both sides of the road. I can make this a single line if I don't want to go and split it. So this is one single line that's on here that's going to be created. All right, so let's go ahead and copy that to that single line. While we're here, let's go ahead and do an extend trim. And automatically extend this line to here. Why did extend trim fail? Because I have more than one thing selected. Why did that still fail? That one worked. Why does this one not work? Oh, I did a trim there. Right? Let's just do an extend on here automatically. Is it already in there? I guess it was already extended out to that. Let's go here now. Let us select that line and put a cul-de-sac on the end of it. Put a cul-de-sac on the end of the line using a template for conveyance division. And this street width, what did we say that was?
It's 50 coming in, the radius is 50, and the return radiuses are 40.
Okay, so the width is, thank you, Tori, 25 on each
You're welcome.
side. This is 50, and this is 40. Actually, that doesn't look right, does it? It's supposed to be 50 here is what I should be putting in there. All right. So it is 50-foot wide street. The big radius is 50. The small radius is our 40. And let's go ahead and create that. Now, how do we trim this up? We've got a couple ways, a couple methods we can try on this. We can try a trim, extend trim, in which we can try and do this automatically, in which you'll trim that up and trim that up. That's not a bad way of doing it. So now we have let's get off of this. We have the road right-of-way line. We have this line here. It extends all the way back to here. Back to there. Let's go and turn this off, make it a little bit easier. There's the line on here. We can go and utilize this to create a road right-of-way or a seed on here. Let's go and, what happens when we create a seed here? When we attempt to create a seed here? I don't see it creating anything.
No, not gonna work.
Not going to work because they're overlapping on top of one another. All right. So instead, it's using all of these, but it's not going to create seeds because they are seeds on top of other polygons in here. And that's one of the limitations. It does not go and allow you to do that. So how would we do this otherwise? Let's go and select this. Let's go and unselect everything else in here. Unselect all of this. Let's zoom in here, unselect this, unselect this. Oh, we don't want to unselect that. We can select that again, select that again, and unselect this, unselect this. Get rid of our points. Now that we have these lines, can we use this to construct a polygon?
You have one extra line at the top.
It shouldn't matter, but
Okay.
let's see. All right, so what it's going to do, construct polygons, what it does is it takes the roads, takes those lines that you've got selected into account, but they don't necessarily have to close. You can have lines that intersect one another as long as they form a closed polygon within the cluster tolerance, it should work. And I say should. And I wanted to go and create a public right-of-way. Let's see if it does that. It did not do that. Why did it not do that?
Didn't think so. Not with the extra lines on top. Oh.
Really? Okay, so you think I need to get rid of this line and this line and create new lines? Is that what you think? Now go through that same thing of selecting them again. And clear this out. So I should just have lines that form a closed polygon. Will this work? Construct it with this, the tolerance. It did in fact do it. All right. So where is it? This is construct polygons. Let's get off of there. Yeah, this one, there's my road. Public road right away. Road. On here. Let's go and change the symbology here so I can see through this. It'll be a little bit more. Let's make our lots on here. Let's make them a little transparent. So I can see what's underneath there. There we go. We can see that there's actually a road underneath there. All right. There's that on here. All right. What do I have left? I actually have 2 steps left at least. The next step I want to do is I want to go and create my tax parcels. All right. So I'm going to go and create a new record. Heathrow tax parcels.
Make sure Heathrow is spelled correctly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and I'm going to select, I can select the lines, I can select the polygons. Let's do this the easy way. Let's just select the polygons on here. By the way, let's also make sure that, let's go to the properties of this and make sure I don't misspell parcels. All right. By the way, did you see that? I can go in here and go to properties of this record and automatically rename that record if I want. All right.
It looks like one of mine, Frank.
All right. So I want to now go and turn on my tax layers on here. I only have my polygon selected. Can I do a copy lines to taxes? Yeah, I don't know. Will it work here? Is it going to copy all of my record lines on here?
I don't think so. I think it's only going to copy the polygon. I could be wrong.
Well, let's go and see. If I copy it, it's copy lines to it. What did it actually copy? If I turn this off, all right, and if I look at my attributes, I have tax lines there now. So it took those records, those polygons, and it copied the lines associated with those polygons over when I did a copy lines to on there. I did not realize it could do that. And then I can do a build on here. Let it go and build. By the way, I've got symbology on here that if in fact I have no parcel ID, put it in pink. That way I know, for example, when I do a clip and things like that, which ones get nulled out with no values in them. And I can say, I have to go and identify those and go through there and fix those. So let's go back to modify now. Let's go to sequence numbering and let's use our text polygons in the name field. And let's put tax parcel and do that. And let's start it at 1 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on here. Let's make sure that our text polygon layer is labeling. And it should be labeling. Oh, labeling that class. There you go. So there we go. This one up here is not a tax parcel. That's not on the records. Here we are here on all of these. So the only other thing we haven't done is we actually have not done a clip of what's underneath here. So we might as well go and do that. Again, because there were I think some conveyance division polygons in here that I think did not get adjusted over. So let's go do a clip. So we want to go and do a clip now. Now on this one, I think we're going to tell it to go ahead and clip, and instead of saying clip all, I'm going to go and identify what I want to be clipped. So I'm going to ask it to go and select everything underneath here. I don't care about points. I can turn those off. Connection lines, I don't care about. Even my tax lines, I really don't care about. Tax polygons. Let's go in here. So one of the things that you'll find is that it automatically goes and connects anything that is touching, from a topologic standpoint, the boundaries of what you've got here. So for example, this one here, I can tell it to go ahead and do that. I'm not. I'm going to tell it, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this one. I already adjusted them out. Don't do this one. Don't do that one. I adjusted it over on this side. Let's clip this. Let's clip this, just in case we had any overlap on the bottom. All right. It also has these division lines on here. Let's clip those out. Let's clip out. Yeah, let's clear that. Division polygons. No, we don't care about that one. Don't care about that one. Nope. Two, yeah, no. Yeah, no. So by now you should be asking, well, isn't there an easier way to do this? And in fact, there is. I can take my selector, hold down my control key and say unselect the rest of these and only select that. All right. And it does the same sort of thing. I don't want to clip that out. I just created that. All right. So go ahead and say discard these. What happened over here? Why did we get? Oh, I didn't clip out those. Well, let's go and do this. Let's go and change this, and let's just make sure that these are all realigned here into this new alignment. Nothing will be aligned. Let's turn off the topology to do this. Let's draw this again. Let's draw it instead of trace. Let's go and set it in a line. So down here, instead of clipping, I actually could have gone and just did a feature align. And we've been having a discussion internally, which is the best way to do it. In a lot of ways, I think the aligned features might be more realistic because it retains those original lines that were in there. It just moves them into this other location, this other alignment on here. All right, I think I'm done. Make sure I save this. And I'm done. So now the question is, what comments do we have? What did I do wrong there? What could I have done or should I have done a little bit differently? That sort of question. So Chris, do we have any comments on there?
No immediate comments.
Okay.
It does take a long time.
Well,
But
it does. It does, but it also, I think in some ways, the other way does the same thing. The challenging part.
I'll disagree with that, Frank.
Pardon me?
I'll disagree with that. The way the Arc map parcel fabric with the joints and stuff like that, there's I feel like there's more room for error in the ArcGIS Pro. That's why when you went in and did that and made sure the connections, I think it's actually even more important now, which is more time consuming.
It is more important But I could have actually done that. I could have placed that whole thing and made the correction without going in there and doing align parcels. Just by going in there when I'm done and doing align features and throwing them all together so that they would align themselves naturally. I could have done that. So align parcels is still a little tedious if you don't let the software automatically attempt to generate the links. Yes, that is there, because I'm still trying to figure out if I trust that generate links under align parcels, and I'm not sure
Yeah,
I do yet.
I'm trying to figure out, are we fudge mapping or what are we doing? You know, like I want to know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and again, it is one of those questions where we're still evaluating it. We're still trying to figure out what is the best way and the best practices on here. I think for some people, the ArcMap parcel fabric and all of those joins, it was very challenging for them, especially when you deal with things like line points and bending of lines, where you could join it to a line and it would only bend that line. It wouldn't bend the one underneath it. So then you'd have to go back and either create a line point on that other line, and that was, I can tell you, that was very, very challenging to go and do that, when that whole concept of line points was very challenging. So that my opinion is the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric is easier for realigning things, for making sure that things are coincident on top of one another. There's still some learning and some muscle memory to be acquired as far as relating it. So one of the things I didn't do on here, for example, and I went in here to a traverse, one of the things that I did not do that I could have done is I could have come in here and said, go to here, and then done my traverse, and let's just say, 45 degrees north for 500 feet. All right. I could have gone and said, when I was inputting this, and let me get out of here and do this. And maybe I don't want to do that. All right. I could have gone in here and said, snap to the closest vertex on here, and it would have gone and snapped to that vertex. And then I could have come back and input the COGO values if I wanted to on there. So there's still some muscle memory involved to figure out what's the best way to go and build lines to make sure that they're snapping. One way is using the traverse tool and setting that closing line every time. Another way is just drawing the line and saying, hey, let's make sure, let's go and start a new line here, from here, and say, snap to feature, go to the closest vertex, and go and do it that way. There's still, I'm not sure we know the best practice yet on this. But if the good thing is, there's a couple ways of doing it. Maybe one works and maybe one doesn't work. I can tell you it is tedious by having to go and zoom in and then reset that closing point. If that's the case, then maybe what we should be doing is just going in here and then saying, okay, well, here's your bearing on the plat, and here's your distance on the plat, and be done. Say, okay, there it is. That's a better way of putting those COGOs in if you already know where those lines are broken. 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I'm not quite sure yet what the best way to do this is. I think the other way can guarantee that you've got a good closure and that you're going to have seeds built. This way, you got a good closure, but it does mean that you have to go over to the attribute dialog box, the attribute pane, and input the bearing and distances on there. Input those attributes on those lines. I don't know. I think we have to work through it and figure it out. But we do have to remember that those tools are, we can go and build something and say, okay, this next line goes over to here. Let's go and snap to the closest endpoint that we have. It automatically will snap to it. Automatically will snap to it. And then we just have to remember, okay, let's go back and attribute it on here. If we want, we could say, go to modify and then go to update COGO and let it do that if that's going to be close, if we're going to be close enough on here. I think we do have a couple ways which are a little bit better. I do think that what we need to do is make sure that we set the ground to grid, make sure we set that bearing basis. That will help us a lot. Make sure that everything is stored and use that to build. The other thing that I think I'm coming to the conclusion is maybe we need to have separate records for each of these parcel types. I'm willing to have people say, no, let's prove it. Maybe it's not the right way to do it. But I don't know whether having them all on a single record is the best thing in the world.
Frank, is there a way to actually build this subdivision out in space and then bring it in?
Sure, why not? But, so if I go over here,
You could always use the show only active function
right.
instead of building it actually out in space.
You can show only the active elements of your record, right? I think that takes a while on here to go and display it that way. Do I actually have? I do have an active record here. I guess I actually did modify, so I did clips on those to do that.
Give it a moment.
Yeah, but again, it does take a while to go and regenerate because it has to just find those active records. That's one way that you are just showing what's associated with that active record. Again, that also argues for maybe we separate these records into the parcel types for a subdivision. The other way that you can do this is you can go in here and just go over into a different coordinate system, build it, and then copy and paste it into position and then rotate it. I still struggle with using the moves command and the rotate command and all of that. I still think there's got to be a better way of doing that than there is right now. It's still, my muscle memory is not there yet, even though I use this quite a bit, and I know what you guys are too. So what are you thinking, Brian? What do you think is going to be a better way of building a subdivision?
That's what I'm working on now. I'm trying to build subdivisions, and well, there's so many different ways that you could build a subdivision now because you have all the tools available. So I'm trying to figure out what's best practice. If I have any error, I want to keep it within inside the subdivision, first of all. I don't want to be, like I keep calling it fudge mapping. I don't want to be trying to just rubber sheet everything to fit together and stuff like that, because I notice a lot of times like that curve at the top that Victoria pointed out. I mean, I've had that happen to, it's kind of changing my existing data that I don't want to change and things like that. So I'm just trying to grasp around, okay, how do I minimize having to do a bunch of other work besides what I'm just working on? So like I said, I've just been, playing around with it, like trying to break it as much as possible, but I haven't come up with one technique yet that I'm super comfortable with. That's the arc map. You had so many constraints on you. There was only one way to map it that would actually work. So once you figured that out, that's how you had to map it. Here, you can kind of do whatever you want.
And I think that's our curse right now, is that ArcMap was so constrained, there was only one way to do it. Once you learn that, you did it, even though that often was not the best way to do this, right? You learned to work within that box. But now with ArcGIS Pro, there are so many variations in there that maybe we don't need just one tool in our toolbox. Maybe there are certain times when we want to use one tool, other times when we want to use a different tool, and it all depends upon that. The challenge is, how do you learn enough to be able to know which tool to use at which time?
And what's important to you is, having the correct deed information on this map, having the, maybe the topology, you want that to be correct. Like, what is your, like, end product? Are you just going to print out some maps, which I can't believe people still do, but that's
Oh,
cool.
don't say that. That's what
I miss,
Victoria
I
does
miss,
all the time.
I miss actually doing that with the big plotters and stuff, but then it doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
But just so you know, it's still in our state code, so we have to put one in the lobby.
gotcha.
Yeah. I agree. So Mark, are you still here? Do you have any comments or anything on here?
I was just kind of wondering, it seemed to take a while, or were you just taking your time just to show every nook and cranny on that?
Actually, it's the latter. I was taking my time to show every single thing and do it slowly. I actually have a workshop in which I compare ArcMap Parcel Fabric to the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric. It takes me longer in ArcMap Parcel Fabric than it does here because, again, on this one, I actually was taking my time and explaining and doing all of this, slowly and such. So, but it becomes muscle memory. It becomes more than anything else. It becomes muscle memory, and it's just, okay, how do we do this? How do we develop that? And I'm sure right now, for example, what we introduced here was using that ground to grid correction for the bearings. That's something that I have learned, and I think that's a good idea. You do have to remember that it's turned on, and make sure you turn it off at the end of that subdivision. But I think that's a very good idea. That will minimize the amount of alignment issues that you might have on here. First thing. Second thing, I think we've learned that you want to make sure, and again, this is still an experiment on my part, that maybe you use a different record for each of the parcel types. I still think that's a good idea. Like I said, that's open for debate. I'm more than willing to go and debate that. Is that the best way to do it? But then there's still these other techniques, such as how do you make sure that when you're building a line, whether it's in a traverse or whether it's using direction and distance, that it snaps to the correct place, so that when you go to build your seeds, when you go to create your seeds that are actually being created. I can share with you that Brian didn't mention this, but one of the things Brian does is he actually goes and takes the subdivision poly, builds the whole poly out, and then he uses lines to split the poly. So he doesn't build the lines to create the poly, he builds the poly and then uses the lines to split it. So that might be a better approach too. So that rather than doing a copy lines too, you just take that subdivision poly, paste it into your lots, and then draw your lines and say split it with these lines. That might be a good way to do it. We're
So
still, go ahead.
Frank, with your records, with the Heathrow tax parcel, Heathrow subdivision, so you would have Heathrow lots, tax parcel, subdivision, easements. Okay, now I come back in and I want to split one of the tax parcels in Heathrow. Are you going to come up with some kind of record naming convention for that? Or like, I mean, if I need to do a search, show me everything associated with Heathrow because I need to print something out here, or, like, how does that all handled?
Well, I think that's different because, again, if you go to just Heathrow and look for everything associated with Heathrow, you can go and do that because you can actually go and search by a query and say, show me everything that's got Heathrow in it for that, and it'll bring up all of those. All right. but again, it's just looking for what's the best way to do some of these things. They've got some pretty interesting things in here. And Esri, the dev team has conceptualized how they think they would be. So in real life, is that really the best way to do it? It may not be. Again, it's how do you make sure that you are as efficient as possible. By the way, I should just build this extent here to make sure my points are in. There you go. My points are in there. So George, I see that you're here. I see you're here, and I know you are not in the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric yet. Do you have any comments or suggestions or any questions on this? Do you have? I should ask if you have your audio right now. Or he's just in listen mode. Oh, there he is.
No audio.
No audio. All right. So again, I think that this is a interesting thing. I think that it's worth experimenting on. I think it's something that we're going to continue. And I'm old enough to remember that these were the types of discussions we had with every single iteration, whether it was what's the best way to go and do parcel mapping with a shapefile, right? Do you go and build the polygon and then split it, or do you draw the lines and then select those and do construct polygon on it? These are the same questions. What's the best way to do now with refinements in the tool? Do you do it? How do you do it? It's still up in the air on there. You know, the one thing we haven't done, and because of using the aligned parcels, we really don't get into things like the transform tool at all on going and moving things together. The transform tool is actually the basis of joins, and it's the basis of the aligned features when you actually join those links. I'm not sure the align tool is the best way to do it. Maybe you do go, because the align tool still has that function of it has to be inside that tolerance. Well, you know what? I can do an align features. If all I want to do is move those so it all aligns with my new thing, I could do that a whole lot faster than using that align parcels in there. It's interesting. It's something I think we're going to all learn together on how to do this. Okay, so with that, are there any other comments? Or should I shut this down and move into office hours? I'll shut it down.
Yeah, I have one other question.
Okay, Mark.
How well does the align parcel tool work when you have parcels that are literally 200 feet off?
Remember that right now what we've discovered is that tolerance has to be within that area on here. So it works as well as that tolerance fits inside of it. And actually, if you think about it, the align parcels tool is actually a combination of the transform tool and align features on here. And when you think about it, align features, you have to have all the vertices within the tolerance. And it's the same thing. Within the aligned parcels, the vertices have to be within that tolerance. So within that tolerance, they have to be in there. So one more thing, just sort of Mark on your question. So one thing that might have to happen, and let's make sure that I have topology in here. One thing that might have to happen is maybe before you do that 200-foot move or alignment, maybe you have to move some of that element over here. Let's do a move. Move failed. What's going on here? I don't know what I've done here. I've got something in here that I did. So I moved this down. I'm not seeing any topology in here at all. But maybe that's what you need. You need to move them closer before you use 200 foot for your realignment on here. And I know there's times when, you know, if you've got a remonumentation project and you find that that new section corner is 200 feet off, you have to start evaluating whether or not you really should be moving things or whether you should just be rebuilding things with the new information on there. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277, and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.